Welcome to episode 111 of Sport SA Daily Diary. Today we're chatting to one of South African hockey's greatest ever players, Marsha Cox. Good afternoon, Marsha. How are you doing today?
Hi, Adam. I'm good, thanks. And you?
Yeah, very good, thanks. We're finding you all the way in Holland.
Yes, rainy Holland. Not quite the summer we had hoped for.
I'm sure, and probably a little bit different to the summers that you used to growing up in Durbs.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, winters are better than the summer day we have here.
Very, very true. Marsha, you're a phenomenal hockey player for South Africa, and we're going to get into all of that a little bit later. But take us back a bit earlier with the Marsha growing up as a youngster. Were you always into hockey, or were you one of the girls that tried most sports?
In primary school, I was, I guess, the typical sports fanatic chick that ends up going to represent South Africa, I guess. I enjoyed all the sports that I was exposed to. So I went to Green Park Primary, and we were really fortunate to have a swimming pool on the premises. So we swam, and I was part of the swimming team. I did ballet, athletics, hockey, of course. I even tried netball once, but it wasn't quite my thing. But yeah, I just enjoyed sports, and I had a love for I was quite an active kid. So I guess I had a knack for doing certain things, and my mother was always encouraging. I guess she always wanted me to get rid of my energy as much as possible.
And you started playing hockey at the age of 6. Did you find that doing other sports like ballet and athletics and swimming helped you with your hockey at all?
Yeah, well, actually, to be honest with you, I grew up on the side of the hockey field. So, like, at the age of 6, I played my first official game. But from birth, I was pretty much being carted to and fro hockey trainings and hockey games with my mum, because she was quite a talented hockey player herself. So, I think the time I could walk, I could hold a hockey stick, and we would have our own mini games on the side of the field while our parents played. So by the time I was 6 years old and I started playing at school, I was quite accustomed to games and how the whole thing went. But to be honest, I think that the exposure to other sports definitely helped it in two ways. One is that it kept me just grounded, I guess, as a person, because I was exposed to different people with different passions, with different ambitions as well. And secondly, it just, as I got older, it helped me identify where my true passion lied. And from that exposure to other sports, it was always quite clear that hockey, it was always my first love.
And I mean, you've tried individual sports in ballet and swimming. Were you always preferential to team sports, though? Were you more of a need to be with your mates type of thing?
Yes, definitely. I feed off energy from other people. I still have that today. So I'm still very much a person that I definitely need some social contact with people. And I love events where there's bigger groups, because it just gives me a lot of energy. But yeah, the team sports element was definitely, it was part of my character. But I guess, I mean, who wouldn't want to be part of a team where you can have so much fun and all your down moments are shared? So it's less intense and makes it manageable. And there's so much that you can learn from everybody continuously. So yeah, I really enjoyed being more in a team than on the track or looking at the black tiles in a swimming pool on your own.
And were you showing leadership skills in your schooling days?
To be honest, I like primary school. I'm not 100% sure, because you know, we're still so young, and everybody's just trying to figure out who they are, I guess. But in high school, I guess so, was the deputy head at Northlands Girls High in my matric year. So I guess that I had some leadership skills back then already. But yeah, I guess that is something that other people saw in me before I could see as in myself.
And Marsha, obviously you played throughout high school. When was it that you realized, okay, I'm actually damn bloody good at this game. I could make a career out of this?
Well, when I was in grade 8, I the hockey coach, the head of hockey, actually called me aside and said, yeah, the first team coach has seen you play and I want you to try out for the school's first team. And I thought, well, this is kind of bizarre. I'd never ever thought, I hadn't even thought about the school's first team, like, ever, except the team that we would go and watch and support and cheer on. I hadn't even thought of, like, one day playing in the school's first team. So yeah, I was extremely honored and extremely nervous. So yeah, in my grade 9 year, I was already in the school first team, and back then Natal Hockey had a really, really great setup. We had the Natal Hockey Academy, and they did a lot of talent identification, and there were always like 5 or 6 players. So it was like myself, Terry Chellan, Kate Woods, and like others, Melissa Rankin, and there were other players as well from our school generation, that we were identified really young, and we would be put in age groups higher than what we actually were in. So yeah, from grade 9, I was 14. I was already exposed to playing with players that were 3 years older than I was, or 4 years older than I was. And by the time I got to grade 10, I had attended my first under-21 interprovincial tournament. And like I said, I wasn't alone, so that made it a lot easier, because it was part of the Natal Hockey philosophy back then to do talent identification and fast track us to see if we could cope. And I mean, if we weren't coping, they would have left us in our age groups. But a lot of us took full advantage of those opportunities. And from a young age, we were playing under 21 hockey, and went on to represent either South Africa at under 21 level or in the senior team. I know that it's not done anymore, and I know that a lot of provinces never did it in the first place, but we were so super lucky to have had those opportunities, because the exposure that we got at such a young age was just so phenomenal. But yeah, I guess it was when I was 14 years old that I knew that I wanted to go further, and the exposure that I got exposed me to things like ambitions of playing for South Africa one day, and that there's a South African under-21 team that I'd never heard of, and you know, they go to a Junior World Cup, so you start setting goals for yourself. And yeah, I guess it started just making me a little bit more focused on this game that I loved, and helped me have some motivation and a bit of drive. And then I kind of put all the other fun trial activities aside, if you want to call it that, and just focused a little bit more on hockey.
I mean, in my opinion, I don't know, I sort of watch a lot of sport and take interest in a lot of sport. To me, if you're good enough, age shouldn't be a factor at all.
Yeah.
You know, you see 16, 17-year-olds playing in the English Premier League. You know, if they're good enough, they need to be there. So why not be the same in hockey?
Yeah, absolutely. I think what's really important, though, is, and that was what was important then for us, was the mentorship that we had and the support structures that we had. So because it was something that was structurally set up, our coaches were very aware of the fact that we were a lot younger than everybody else. So we were very much catered for in off-field activities. which I think is something that became a concern for a lot of parents and a lot of coaches and a lot of managers. And it's probably the reason why it's discouraged today. But I totally agree with you. If an athlete is talented enough to compete at a higher level, they should be given that opportunity, but have the support, and definitely mentorship is something that's really important. Because, like, just from my own experience in my matric year, I was part of the SA Under-21 squad that was preparing for a Junior World Cup to take place the year thereafter. And of course, I needed to focus on completing my matric year on a good note. And during the senior IPT, we would compete as the SA Under-21s, and like, it still happens. But the final day of the IPT fell on my matric dance day, and Ros Hull was our coach, and she was totally understanding, because I only get this opportunity to go to my matric dance once. So I flew home early and went to my matric dance. You know, like, the timing was good in the sense that it was an IPT and not that we were sitting in the middle of our international tournament. But I was really grateful for the fact that I could have that opportunity to be part of the SA Under-21 setup and still go to my matric dance. And like, yeah, we played club hockey, but there was always an understanding that if your academics needed some extra attention, it was okay to miss a training. It was okay to, you know, and then it wasn't just that, okay, you missed the training because of your academics, you come back straight into it. There would be a slow, gradual build up again. And small little details, and that attention to detail, and the attention to detail from our coaches and the communication to our teammates, so that you always had an understanding group, was so important. And I think that is something that needs to be recognized, I think, for a lot of young athletes. And I agree with you. If they're talented enough, they should get the support, and they should get the opportunity to play ahead.
And Marsha, just speaking of your matric dance, do you feel as an athlete who probably had to dedicate a lot of time and energy into training and studies and all that kind of thing, that you missed out on elements of your social life? And if yes, is it something that is a regret for you? To me, it shouldn't be, because of the career that came from it. But at the time, I mean, it must have been quite difficult having to sort of dedicate yourself to the sport a lot.
Well, to be honest with you, Adam, like, I'm really good friends with a lot of other international athletes. And we sometimes talk about this element of our careers, and I don't have any regrets. Like, of course you miss out on various social aspects of teenagehood or early adulthood, you know, your first years at university, where you aren't going to go to every varsity party because you know you've got an early morning session the next day. But fortunately, I think that in most sports internationally, your season is structured in a way that you do have an off season. And it's really important. I would definitely encourage athletes to always, in your off season, be your age and do the things that you feel you're missing out on, because there's so many more things that you're gaining that other typical students are not gaining. And you can sort of have the best of both worlds in a very different structured way. But I don't have any regrets. And I think some of the things that I missed out on socially, I don't think were really massive life-changing events for my friends either. So I don't think that I actually missed out on anything.
And you chatted about support system a little bit earlier, and mentors.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, your mom was a coach at this point. She must have been a fabulous support, but was there any element of pressure on you to perform, seeing your mom had been such a good player? And who else was sort of a mentor or somebody that you looked up to at this point?
Yeah, so on my mum, actually, I think that because she came from a different generation, and her playing experience, and like with her playing experience, she never ever put me under pressure. In fact, my mum was the parent who a lot of the other parents didn't know even played hockey until much later into my high school career. She was the type of parent that would come to a hockey game and sort of sit alone in a corner because she didn't quite enjoy any of the competitive parental banter that would happen on the sidelines. She just wanted to watch the game, and she was very much, because she was a coach, she could also identify talents, and she was always really positive about my teammates if they played well. But she never ever gave me any tips or advice until I asked, which is something that I guess in the beginning you don't realize how positive that can be for you. But yeah, I never ever felt any extra pressure, and in fact, I think I put myself under more pressure than anything else in a competitive way. But yeah, she was always just a sort of silent supporter, and if I ever asked her about what she thought of the game, then she would give me an honest opinion, but she was never one to sort of defend me and fight for me in a way. Like, for example, I think I was 14 and I played my first Premier League hockey game and I got shat on from one of the senior players in the team. And, I was quite like shocked and overwhelmed with this whole experience. It's my first game. I was so nervous, and then getting shouted at, and the player had said, like, you're not running hard enough. So remember going home and saying to my mom, like, I can't believe she shouted at me like this. And she was like, okay, well, what did she say? And then I was like, yeah, she told me to run harder. And then my mom was like, well, do you think you can run harder? And I was like, yeah. And she's like, well, then next time run harder. so yeah, well, she was always really supportive, like, don't get me wrong, but she was, I think just because of being a coach herself, she knows how difficult it can be, or how challenging it can be, having parents sort of challenge the coaches. So she was never that type of parent. She was a parent who just would try to offer me positive advice or things that I could control, and she would take from her own playing experience and her own coaching experience, which, yeah, until much later in my career, I appreciated. But yeah, somebody else who was really important right at the beginning of my career was Jill Daniels, or Jill Montague, when she had gotten married. She was the first player of color to ever play for the South African women's hockey team, and her story really, really touched me. And she was somebody that was part of our coaching staff with our SA Under 21 group, and she was from Durban. So, of course, she knew my mom, and but I really respected her. I really admired her for some of the decisions that she made in her life. And I was really inspired by her story and how much she sacrificed to play hockey for South Africa, that it always sort of motivated me to be prepared to make some of the sacrifices to play for South Africa one day.
I think every sportsman does make sacrifices in some way, probably some more than others. Marsha, your debut for the Proteas, or for South Africa, came in October 2001 against the US. You were just 18 years old.
Yeah. Yeah, I was. But yeah, I was really lucky. Like I said, we were part of this group that had been fast-tracked. So amongst the other debutants was myself, Jen Wilson, Jurka Korloff, Marissa Alves, and Melinda Foss, I think, and I can't remember if there were any others that on that day. But Jen Wilson was from Natal as well, and although she's older than I am, I was fortunate enough to play with her from the time I was 16. So it was really special having one of my teammates from a young age, even though she wasn't that young. But yeah, it was comforting knowing that I had other teammates around me, just as nervous, with also very interesting journeys to that point. And yeah, it was sort of a dream come true. I'd dreamt about it from a young age, and then it was happening.
And do you remember the sort of, I mean, it must be a emotional roller coaster playing for your country for the first time. Do you remember what was going through your head and the emotions you were feeling?
Well, I think at the time I knew that I would start on the bench, so that gave me a bit of comfort. So I think at the time, yeah, if I remember correctly, I was extremely nervous, and all I kept thinking was, okay, you're going to get a chance to go in the field. Just keep it simple. Just pass it to green. Just pass it to somebody in green, and you'll be okay. And yeah, that was all that was going through my head the whole time, because I was just terrified.
Marsha, I mean, from there, you just really skyrocketed. You became captain in 2006, so at the age of 24-ish, very young to be captain. How was that first captaining your country for the first time, and what sort of captain were you?
Adam, to be quite honest, in the beginning, it was quite challenging. The dynamics that were happening around us was quite different in the setup. But I had a lot of support from the team. I was elected as the captain, so that gave me a lot of confidence in my role. Prior to that, I had also, Lindsay I was vice captain prior to that, so I really learned on Lindsay a lot, and she became my mentor, and I still have lots of contact with her today. We still have a very the mentorship hasn't ended in our friendship. And yeah, I was really fortunate to also be part of a program where I had, outside of hockey, a mental trainer. So that really helped me in that sort of journey into taking over the role and wearing the captaincy band. But I think the type of captain that I was changed also in the years. So in the beginning, I was probably a captain that led a little bit from behind, and really learned a lot on the team. I wasn't scared to voice my opinion or scared to represent the team in any way, but I was very much about the team coming first, and that all the voices in the team need to be heard, and that's where any representation would come from. So I would first sort of get a lot of feedback from the team before I would have my feedback. Whereas I think as I developed in the role, I needed to be a little bit more assertive. That was something that I'd learned from my teammates, that they appreciated. I took a lot more feedback from the type of leader the team wanted, and probably changed to adapt to what the team wanted and what the team needed. And I think one of the, if any of my teammates would describe the type of leader that I was, I think that some of them would say that I was honest. I think if anything, I was always honest. I think I always tried to be fair, and I always put the team first. So that part never ever changed, right up until the end. And but I think towards the end, I tried to protect the team a lot more and be sort of the representative that was prepared to put their head on the chopping block when things got a bit tricky.
And do you feel you had to grow up quicker than you may some of your teammates may have had to, because you'd taken on this captain's role and it required a mature head?
I don't feel that. I think that my maturing quicker started from the time I was playing ahead of my age group. I think that was as a result of I had to grow up if I was going to be the 14-year-old in a under 18 team, and the only 14-year-old at the time. And I had to grow up if I was going to be the 16-year-old in the under 21 national setup. So I think that maturing elements or characteristics started at a really young age. So by the time I became the captain, I think I was already quite mature for my age in that regard, and I'd already been in the national team for 4 years, one of the highest caps at that time when the captaincy handover took place. So I think that I had already accumulated quite a bit of experience and long-standing relationships with some of the older players who maybe came in a bit later as well in the setup.
And Marsha, I mean, you had a phenomenal career. You were certainly an icon of the South African game and the world game. Over 330 appearances for South Africa, 3 Olympic Games, 3 World Cups, 4 Commonwealth Games. You're in the
4 World Cups.
4 World Cups. You're in the IHF World 11 3 times. I mean, did you ever dream that you could have such an amazing career? And is there any specific moment through your career that you look back now and think that was really special?
I never ever thought that looking back and listening to the accolades, I never ever thought that would have been possible. I've never been a player who was even being the captain. I was never one to ride on that as a security for my selection. So I always worked really hard, and every year I never took it for granted, because I always knew I needed to prove myself in order to be selected. So as I was living it, I never ever thought that all of this would have been possible. Of course, you set your goals on making an Olympic team or going to the World Cup, but you never take it for granted that you'll be there until you hear your name on the list or see it on the list. So yeah, looking back now and thinking, wow, 4 World Cups and I would have never ever thought, even after my first one, like, oh yeah, I'll have 4 under my belt before I stop. No. But yeah, I can't remember your second part of the question.
Was there a sort of one moment that stands out above all others?
There are quite a few. Of course, going to the Athens Olympics and hearing my name on that list, that team list, was something that will always remain totally special. Your first Olympic Games is something that like I remember in '92 watching the Olympics on TV and seeing Ilana Meyer and thinking, oh my God, I want to represent South Africa one day. Back then I thought it would be for track and field, but little did I know. So when you have this sort of dream that you never ever thought could ever sort of be tangible and become a reality, when that comes true, then I think that will always remain something special. And yeah, there have been so many special moments. I remember the first time that my name got announced on that World 11, I didn't even know that, like it was possible for, I think Pity was the only South African to ever be on that list before. And I didn't think, that South Africans ever got that attention from the international stage. So it was an extreme surprise and a huge honor. But I think one of the moments that also really stand out for me was in 2012. We played an Investor Cup in London, and we played against Germany, England, and the Netherlands. And I remember that tournament so clearly because, yeah, we did so well as a team, and I just felt really in good form. And yeah, I think I got player of the tournament. I can't remember, but it was something that was like, for the team as well, we really were on fire. And I think we came third, which meant we beat a team that finished way above us in the Olympics a few months later. And I remember we went to shootouts with the Netherlands, and and they went on to win gold at the Olympic Games. So it's unfortunate that then at the major event we couldn't repeat that performance. But that tournament, I think, is one that also definitely stands out in my career as a highlight.
And Marsha, speaking about the Netherlands, you met Alexander, the Dutch coach. You fell in love, you got married. Was it love at first sight?
It was a bit confusing at first sight because we had just qualified for the Olympic Games in London, and I had no clue, to be honest with you. Like, I'd already been playing in the Netherlands for 2 seasons, and in my first season he was coaching one of the women's hoofdklasse teams, and I never ever paid attention to any of the Dutch men or Dutch coaches in the whole hockey scene. So on the last night, we were in India with all of the teams, of course, and in the team hotel was a sort of like bar downstairs, and all the teams just went down to sort of celebrate the end of the tournament, and he was there to do all the analysis for the competitors there, because they had anticipated, you never know who you're going to play in the Olympics, and their professionalism towards the game is on a different level. So they had to send somebody to India to get all the video analysis of the tournament. And I remember we were at the bar, and he said that he was from Holland, and I said, "No ways, I play in Holland." So it wasn't exactly the most the best first impression, I think, from my end, because I'm totally ignorant and naive. But yeah, soon after that we had met for a coffee, and we had contact with each other on a daily basis since then, and it just went so fast.
Obviously, it did make an impression. Marsha, you retired in August 2015 after 14 years with the national team. Was that an incredibly difficult decision?
Yes, it was. It was because, for so many years of my life, I put this sport, this team, everything about it first. And for a couple of months prior to making the decision, I needed to think long and hard about sort of my future, and putting things into a bit of perspective of where I saw myself in, your 5 or 10 year plan. And unfortunately, the reality of those next steps and the challenges that you face with those next steps were sort of becoming a bit of a hard reality to face. but also it was a question of, do I take a break and come back after a while? Because in those 14 years, I think I'd only missed 2 tournaments. One was when a number of senior players were rested during an Africa Cup, and another was post-Olympic Games. I had an ankle injury, so I needed the time to do my rehab, and going to the tournament was not conducive to that. So yeah, in 14 years to only miss out on 2 events, and like never miss a training camp, never miss a beat, basically. It was something that I'd also battled with. Do I take a break and then come back, or do I retire? But yeah, like I said, just having to face the realities of the next things in life, I decided to retire, and it was really, really tough, really emotional decision, really difficult to sort of settle with the idea of letting go. But fortunately, I've always been really, really lucky to be surrounded by good friends, good mentors. Like I said, Lindsay and I still have a really good relationship, so I lent on her a lot. PT was somebody that I also chatted to a lot about, you know, how do you know, when do you know, when is that right moment? What does it feel like? How scary is it? Every question that I could possibly ever thought of, I had a good support group. And also internationally, from playing in the Netherlands all those years, I was exposed to a lot of international players, and chatting to them really helped me be comfortable with that decision. But it was tough. It was tough.
And Marsha, I mean, just in closing, it's been great chatting, but you've obviously been in the game since you were 3 or close to the field. Are you still as passionate about the game as you were when you were younger? Do you see yourself being involved in the game going forward? And will you encourage your kids to play hockey?
Yeah. Am I still passionate?
Being pregnant, and congratulations.
Yeah. Thank you. Am I still passionate about the game? 100%. Am I still passionate about the South African women's hockey team? 100%. Do I want to be involved? 100%. I have been involved as an athlete's representative since retiring. And I really enjoy that function. And one of the things that stands out for me, and like you've heard, I've mentioned mentorship and how important that was in my career. And while I do not rate myself as a coach, I feel that mentorship is something that's an element that is something that people don't talk about a lot. And that is a direction that I would like to go in with the sport that I love the most. I am very much about both representing athletes, but also representing athletes in a way that we can understand the mindset and the reasoning behind a lot of administrative decisions that are made, because there is a bigger picture, and it might not please me as an individual, but it needs to please everybody else in the sport. And I think sometimes athletes struggle with that understanding and that acceptance. And in that regard, I want to help a lot of, particularly hockey players. I think that as the generations have changed and as the world has changed, we see a lot of different characteristics changing in team sport as well, worldwide. So yeah, how I want to be involved, I want to be more involved in mentorship and team management, because I believe that a good team manager is also extremely important next to a good coach, to just manage different aspects for the team and for the players. So those are sort of the elements that I would like to get involved in, and I have been involved in, but I'd like to grow in those fields. And my kids, well, because my husband has been a hockey coach, he's also just decided to step away from it after this summer. But because of that, my daughter has pretty much grown up also on the side of the hockey field, and I play social hockey now. It's social yet very competitive. The league is deemed social, but our team is not.
You can
So,
ever be social when you've been a professional.
no, it's terrible. The competitiveness in us is definitely something that is hard to, I think, shake off. But yeah, so my daughter comes along to the games, and I'm sure baby number 2 is going to as well. And much like we grew up playing our mini games on the side of the field, they getting, well, my daughter so far, but like the kids in our team are getting that same exposure, and it's quite fun to see, and it's quite special to see that, you know, part of my childhood can be shared, even though I'm in a different country and totally different teammates to perhaps what I'd thought of when I was younger. But it's really nice to give them that experience. And I definitely will be taking leaves out of my mom's book and let them choose and be guided by their own hearts. So she also has gone to her first ballet lesson, where climbing on the bars was more fun than doing the ballet. So we'll see what it turns out to be like a bit later.
One's wiseness has certainly rubbed off.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I just think you just hear so many coaches these days complaining about, you know, the competitiveness of parents. And I think given the nature, particularly in South Africa, of our school sporting structures, it's understandable. But on the other hand, you know, who wins in the end? And I think kids need to be kids, and they need to be supported and encouraged, but given a little bit of food to accept failure or decide what they want to do with failure themselves. Yeah.
Marsha, it's been absolutely magic talking to you. We could chat for another hour, but I know that you've got dinner plans. Thank you so much for joining us. Good luck with baby number 2. I'm sure it's all going to go smoothly, and I have no doubt we're going to see a Cox Jr. on the hockey field in the near future.
Thank you. Thanks, Adam. And thanks for thinking of me for this interview. And yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing what the future holds, not only for the little Coxes, but for
Cox too. Look out for tomorrow's episode of Sport SA Daily Diary, where we chat to a footballing legend who went on to play at the highest level in both England and Scotland.